Alright, so check-in assignments. I wanna go over these, probably do it in person anyway, but basically this is what's gonna be the assignment, the weekly assignment for the next, I think, 3 weeks. And this is basically sort of self-directed, working on whatever makes sense for you for a given week. So again, there's no specific milestones, like you must have modeling done, whatever, by this week. But again, it's just sort of get some feedback as you go, so that you can figure out how best to use your time and like what you might want to improve for grading purposes and what have you, going forward. Also show me that you've actually been doing things. So these are worth 4 points each, for a total of 12 points, or basically 12% of your grade is these check-in assignments. So it is important that you actually do work on things. If, I know the world's insane right now, if something comes up, just let me know. I am flexible on deadlines. By default, these are not eligible for resubmit just because they're supposed to be sort of as you go, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to sort of, by just making progress on your assignment, be able to go back and like submit the same thing for 3 different weeks and like get the points for it. So again, by default, not eligible for resubmit, but I am flexible on scheduling and such if you do maybe like need an extension for a week or something like that. Anywho, I have a link, not super inherently relevant, but just a link to the information with all of the final stuff for it and like what I will be grading you on for the final lighting and texturing, the final models, all of that stuff. It does seem kind of relevant, so I've linked it here if you need it. And again, the check-ins themselves are not so much graded on specifically like the model quality, but kind of like the overall work that you've been doing. Does it seem like you're making a reasonable amount of progress? So what I'm looking for is either you've done like maybe for modeling, it's kind of an easy example, like you've done a lot of stuff of lower detail, is going to be more or less the same thing as, I've made 1 or 2 really high poly models or whatever for like super crazy foreground objects. So it's really kind of project dependent, just sort of looking at like how well your scene is fleshed out with whatever you have, basically. It's kind of one of those things where like unless it's really obvious that you only spent like 2 hours on the project, that like you'll probably be getting mostly full credit for these. This is obviously not a guarantee. It doesn't mean you should slack off on not do stuff. But it is mostly just I just want to check and make sure you're doing things. It's not meant to be something to stress you guys out like, oh god, I didn't get enough stuff done. Because it's also, I realize it's sort of hard to quantify like, yes, my desk is 25% as cluttered as it needs to be. Like, what does that even mean? So it's mostly just holding you accountable for, like, make sure you are actually doing things. The other thing that I just want to briefly mention, even though I've done it, right here. So sometimes you do a lot of stuff on the back end that's not obvious when I look at what you've done, right? So, like, if I'm looking at animation, and I'm like, oh, you didn't get a lot of animating done, but you spent, 10 hours making a really nice rig for your character, please do let me know that. Feel free to include a Maya file of your rig or whatever. But like, obviously that's going to change how I look at, the 4 seconds of animation you did, while also realizing that if you've done a bunch of rigging back-end stuff, or you've done a bunch of like particle sims to figure out something that you needed to do or whatever. So like, do let me know that stuff. That is important. I do pay attention to that kind of stuff. Standard late penalties apply, so if you submit this like after class, I'll take off 10% of the grade, etc., etc., etc. So I will be giving, and these grades do not count to anything, but I'm gonna just type in, if you've looked at the comments I normally give, I'll break down an assignment based on like your modeling, your texturing, and then like your animation, and just give a grade for each one. I'll be doing the same thing for this. Where I sort of look at your modeling and look at your texturing, and I'll just be giving like basically fake grades, treating it as if you submitted this for the final and did nothing else to it, like that's the grade that you basically get for the final, more or less. So I'm not, and then I'll just, as usual, I'll just sort of go through and like give a little bit of feedback about, what you could do to improve stuff if something looks really weird or something looks really good. I'll throw that in as well. But again, obviously all of this is a work in progress, so if I say something stupid you're already planning on doing, grain of salt, because I don't know what you guys are all planning. But yeah, so like I said, I will be giving you these sort of temporary grades. They don't count towards anything, it's just sort of giving you a better idea of, like, again, sort of where you might stand for your final. And if you have any concerns about that, you just reach out to me. I can double check what you have again, and then I can sort of maybe give you some more specific feedback about what you would want to improve if you're fishing for some extra points on the grade. All right, so that's basically these. So again, what to submit for this? Basically, this is like the only thing I actually want a zip folder for is this. So I want two main things, I guess. So one is just like a note in the submission comments about whatever you've been working on, and that's where you know, if you said like, I'm doing a bunch of rigging stuff, I was learning particle sims, whatever. Anything specific that you want me to know, drop that in the submission comments. That's kind of where I'll judge like what I should be actually looking at for your assignments. And then for the actual stuff that you're submitting, I would like that in a single zip folder. And if you could, in a single zip folder, please. And then throw in a folder for all of the modeling and texturing stuff that you've done. So this is, I've included some sort of lists of stuff down here for what you should submit for each of these. So modeling and texturing is basically going to be like if you only did modeling, then you would only need to submit the stuff for the modeling. And also just, you know, always submit me an updated play blast of your stuff, even if you didn't do any animation stuff, it was only modeling. Just, again, I like to look for stuff like, you know, do you see the ground plane at the edge of the world? That kind of stuff, and that would show up in a play blast where it wouldn't in the stuff for the modeling. Plus a play blast takes 10 seconds, so just do it, it'll be fine. And then again, play blast should always be for your final, from the final camera angles or the most final camera angles that you have. And they should, please I beg of you, be compressed with Media Encoder or something similar. When I say compressed, I know I've said this before, but I don't mean just in a zip file. Maya is notoriously terrible at spitting out like 500 megabyte videos that are 7 seconds long. Blackboard doesn't like that. I don't like that. It takes me like 10 minutes to download an assignment, and I have 40 things to grade. That's a lot of time. So please, again, Media Encoder, it's free. You should be able to download it through Drexel for the same way you get like the Adobe other products. I think Handbrake is also a sort of free compressor program that works reasonably well. That should be linked in the sort of free resources drive, which you can find on Learn somewhere. I think somewhere, like I said, there's like free resources linked. I believe in the Google Drive for all the classes. Yes, free resources, cool, should be in there. So yes, please do compress your play blasts. Always include a play blast. And then again, modeling and texturing is only if you worked on modeling and texturing, which you should also be letting me know up here. And then just to take a, so hopefully that'll make sense. I'm going to go over these in class, or like in the meetings, because I just want to make sure that this makes sense, because I know it's like a weird assignment. But there is some overlap, so a lot of times, like for texturing and lighting, I have a zip file with a render. I'm actually just going to change this to folder with one, because the folder should be in the zip file, so I don't need a zip file within a zip file. So give me a folder with one render of every scene, of every 50th frame of your scene. There should be at least 12 of these frames. And that is pretty much the exact same requirement for like the animation. So if you submit an animation, you don't need to do both of these because it's going to be the exact same thing. That's totally fine. Don't freak out about that. That's just, you know, I just kind of always, in this case, would like these sort of test renders, just proofing your lighting and, you know, proofing whatever else you've had. But like I said, sometimes there are some duplicate stuff. In this case, like renders of your environment or like texturing or whatever. These are similar enough where like if you've worked on both modeling and texturing, as far as I'm concerned, those are kind of overlap renders. Just do the ones for the texturing. That's totally fine. I mostly just want, you know, nice renders showing off your environment. And that's all I'm really fishing for there. So hopefully that all makes sense. So again, just basically like throw everything you need into a zip file. I always want the stuff for the animation with a, you know, updated play blast, even if you've not made any animation changes. And then just grab, if you've only worked on texturing or lighting or whatever, just grab these dudes. That's all you need to submit for that. You can ignore the modeling, vice versa. If you've worked on everything, just throw everything in. There is one little doodle for the modeling. I would just for grins. Honestly, I probably won't look at these unless something looks really, really weird. Throw me a Maya file of your most up-to-date models, and then also include a PDF. Just sort of outline what you've done. If you have, that master list of stuff you need to make, show me like what you have done and what you still need to do, that kind of thing. Just so I have an idea if, I'm looking at your scene and I'm like, ah, yes, this seems super empty. I can see what you have planned for it, and then maybe give you some more specific feedback on that. But yeah, so hopefully that all makes sense. If you have questions, please let me know. Like I said, I know this is like a little bit of an unusual assignment, I think, for some of the animation classes. Usually they're more structured. I tried to set this up in a way that makes sense, but if it doesn't, I can totally change these as I go. If it's, if you guys have suggestions about how to make these clearer or better or anything like that, always open that kind of stuff. So hopefully that'll make sense. Have a lovely week. And actually, I lied. There's like one more tidbit that's like a very vague tidbit. So week 7, you have the check-in. So Thanksgiving week, there is no class, but I am still asking that you guys submit the check-ins. So there will be a check-in due whenever your class is due, on, Monday or Tuesday this week. And then the week you come back, there is a rough cut due, but there's no actual real like lectures or meetings or anything this week. Go, have fun with your people, do whatever Thanksgiving stuff, just sort of like take a break as much as you can at least. That never worked out so much for me. But just be aware that when you come back, there is 1 week with the rough cut due, and then the next week is the first and only week of class in December. Well, I guess technically for some of you, you'll have 2 weeks in December, but that is basically the last class you will have before finals. So yeah, cool. That's most of the assignments that are going to be due until then, so yeah.